I'm Aaron Freeman, and I can't wait to see what Jaylen Walker does in year 2 because it might be the most important variable in determining how good this Falcons defense is in 2026.
I'm Jarvis Davis, and Ian Cunningham is a man of his word.
Rise up, A-Town. It's the Falcons Squad. Everything Atlanta Falcons every week. Breaking down all the big hits and game-changing plays from the ATL. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. Straight from the ATL, the Falcons Squad Show starts now.
Welcome to the Falcons Squad Show. I'm your host, Jarvis Davis, and riding with me today is only a co-host, a duo today with my main man, Aaron Freeman, host of Locked On Falcons. Now he has to pay attention for the entire show. So, yeah, this is going to be a good one. So, y'all going to hear a locked-in Aaron Freeman on Locked On Sports Atlanta. Let's go, baby. All right, listen to this Falcons Squad Show. I want to say thank you for being a huge part of what making Locked On now the #1 sports podcast network. And I want to also let you know that today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Head to FanDuel.com today to get started. Falcon Squad Show is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. Coming up on today's show, is Ian Cunningham's roster ready for the NFL draft? We'll discuss Jahan Dotson being wide receiver 2. And also, Jeff Ulbrich has done it again. He has spilled the beans on Jaylen Walker today. So, yeah, it's going to be one of those.
Locked in, Jarvis?
Yes. Yes. I think we already know who's not locked in.
Here we go. This is going to be one of those shows. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
It's going to be one of those shows. It's going to go down. Yeah. Jarvis and Aaron for an hour. Yeah, it's about to go down today. But first, we have to kind of talk about this trade, Aaron, and the Falcons and Eagles swapped the 4th and 6th round pick. And also the Falcons also acquired safety Sidney Brown. Picks number 114 and 197 going to the Eagles in exchange for picks number 122 and 215 for Sidney Brown. So when you think about this trade, because I remember vividly Ian Cunningham saying, "Hey man, I'm all about picks." It was almost like he had a lust for picks and taking multiple swings, like with the Howie Roseman theory. So what do you think the line of thinking was behind this trade? Like, okay, so how do you envision Sidney Brown kind of putting himself into the fold for this 2026 Falcons roster?
Well, I think, with the trade itself, a pick swap was probably the only realistic way the Falcons could pull off any trades for players, because as you mentioned, Ian Cunningham is all about that draft currency, and losing draft currency is a no for him. And so to be able to trade for a player and still have the same number of picks that you had to begin with, I think is sort of the desired outcome. I think, when you are stuck with those types of trades, you're usually forced to have to pick from players that may not necessarily be as desirable for their respective teams, guys that are more likely to be potentially on the roster bubble going into training camp this time of year than necessarily guys that are core parts of that. And I think it feels like that is the case with Sidney Brown. That's not an indictment of him as a player, but they had a lot of expectations for Sidney Brown when they drafted him, the Eagles, that is, in the 3rd round, coming off that Super Bowl year, losing CJ Gardner-Johnson and Marcus Epps in free agency that year, and sort of expecting him to come in and be an immediate sort of plug and play starter for them. And he just never quite lived up to that. And then he had an injury at the end of his rookie season that kind of derailed his second season. And then last year, coming back with Vic Fangio in the fold, just never seemed to get on the same page, as we've seen with a number of players in Philadelphia, where it's like, if Fangio likes you, things are looking great for you in that Eagles defense. But if Fangio doesn't fool with you, then let's say Azeez Ojulari is arguably one of those players as well. So I think with Sidney Brown, he was kind of on the bubble because he's basically been a special teams player, but not quite the caliber of safety that they wanted in that defense. But I think when it comes to the Falcons, what Sidney Brown is potentially bringing to the table, I think, is something that the Falcons will really value, right? So it's basically another man's trash is another man's treasure. And I think what Sidney Brown really brings to the Falcons, because initially I was thinking, oh, like this gives them a third safety. He can maybe do some big nickel stuff. But then going back and watching some of the film over the weekend of his time in Philadelphia, most of his good reps are when he's playing deep coverage. And that, I think, is really what the Falcons were valuing in Sidney Brown, because when you look at Xavier Watson, you look at Jesse Bates, both really good deep coverage guys. But then you get to the bench and you're like, who else is here that in the event of one of these two starters going down, and safety is very much an injury-prone position. Fortunately for the Falcons, they didn't have to really deal with that outside of a handful of snaps where DeMarco Hellams got in the game last year. But like having a third safety that you can trust to do some of the deep responsibilities that are so pivotal to what Xavier Watts and Jesse Bates do and their impact on the team, I think was something that the Falcons really valued. And I think they're getting that in Sidney Brown. And for what is basically the equivalent of a 6th-round pick, you're also getting a really good special teams player. So you're going to get a guy that really could step in and really fill that role for Kadero Hodge as the gunner opposite Mike Ford on your punt coverage team as well as on kickoff coverage. So I think what Sidney Brown, even though he didn't necessarily live up to the hype in Philadelphia or fill the shoes that they wanted to, I think he has a better opportunity here in Atlanta to at the very least be a quality depth option for the team at safety. And potentially, if things go well, you know, you could be having a conversation about him being in the mix to be a starter as early as 2027, because Jesse Bates is a free agent after this season. All right. And so if this season goes well, you could see the Falcons being like, okay, well, we could pay Jesse Bates, you know, $18 million or whatever the price for a safety of his caliber is now. Or we could, you know, potentially re-sign Sidney Brown for, you know, a third of that or something, like for $5 or $6 million a year. We're not getting nearly an all-pro player, but we are still getting a quality starter for us.
Yeah, man. I think that's the thing. You bring up a couple of interesting points, and I definitely want to put a pin in that Jesse Bates piece for a second. But I think as far as when you look at where that third safety candidates, right, like DeMarco Hellams and then Jamie Robinson, you know, it's just a bunch of guys, right? So when you have a guy like a Sidney Brown who can come in and do some things for you, maybe even slide in that nickel spot, maybe potentially. So I think those are some, when I think about what Ian Cunningham has done so far as the general manager of this team, I just think value. That's the first thing that comes to mind. Finding value, finding good value, finding guys who were productive in the NFL and, you know, play the edge position, or guys who played the linebacker spot that they've had those, you know, moments of production, and they're trying to figure out a way to try to get back to getting paid. Hey, finding a quarterback who has led the league in passing yards and completion percentage and it made the Pro Bowl, and he's looking to revive his career or resurrect his career and get inside of here for $1.3 million or whatever that number is. So I think Ian Cunningham is definitely let us know through talking about it and actually going out and doing it about what his vision is for during this free agency period. And I think that Sidney Brown is another case for that. Now, you brought up something that kind of piqued my interest. You know, you're probably going to get several questions like this throughout this show, because we got an hour, man. We got plenty of time, baby. You know what I'm saying? Just you and I. So we riding this thing together. So if the Falcons find themselves in a situation where they're not playing well and it's getting close to that trade deadline, and you just mentioned that Jesse Bates is going to be a free agent, you know, does potentially at least answering the phone call from a contender pique your interest? If people come calling for a guy like Jesse Bates during that time, when you know teams who are competitors or contenders, or they're looking to make a run at the Super Bowl, like, does that fall in line with what Ian Cunningham has done so far here in the offseason in 2026? Do you think that could fall right in line that, hey, he's at least picking up the phone, answering phone calls about Jesse Bates at the trade deadline if the season is not going the way he thought it should be?
Yeah, I think it definitely fits with how he's conducted business so far. I think you gotta in this scenario that you're talking about, Jarvis. I think you gotta at least listen to calls to see what the offers are. I think there's a certain point where I don't think you're just trading Jesse Bates just to trade Jesse Bates, because at a certain point, like, the value that you're going to get from him on the football field, even if that's only going to be for 8 more games of the season, is going to exceed a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick or something like that, if that's the best offer you're going to get at that stage. But if a contending team is willing to sweeten the pot a little bit, throw a little bit of honey on that thing, and maybe go a little bit higher at that point than a late round pick, I certainly think it will be worthwhile for the Falcons to explore that.
Yeah, man, because it makes all the sense in the world, because I think it goes back to when people talk about where this team is and being honest with themselves. And I think this city tends to have a issue with being honest with themselves when it comes to where this team is. And I think where this team is all about building a foundation for the future. That's what I see when I look at this roster. You're in the process of building a foundation for the future. I'm not saying you're rebuilding. I'm just saying exactly what it is. You're trying to build a foundation for the future, and holding on to a guy who's an all-pro level safety, and you're not in the business of contending for a Super Bowl. I think that value for keeping him comes down a little bit. I'm not saying that it's like you could just throw him away, like you said, for a 5th round pick. But if somebody calls you and say, hey, man, we got a 3rd for you, I have to listen. I will have to listen to that conversation. So, because I think that the more you build the more you build from a draft capital standpoint, and him saying that, hey, we won't be in this position again, I believe him. Just by the simple move that he's made already. I feel like this man is really trying to get to a point where he has multiple picks, and if he feels like he's gotten this roster to a point where they can contend before if it's an early plan and that plan is starting to move along a little bit faster than he thought it would, he already has those picks in place to say, I can go get a guy like that. I can be the team on the other end making that phone call at the trade deadline to say, hey, what you want for this safety? Because y'all don't need him like that, because we're trying to go to a Super Bowl. So I think it's positioning yourself to be able to make those phone calls instead of receive them once that time comes during the year. Now, I also want before we move on, I wanted to kind of get into like this, like the draft philosophy, like coming up, because I think when you have a guy like Ian Cunningham and what he's trying to do, and I think that when you have this trade that he made for Sidney Brown, is there a pathway to acquiring more picks? Because I think you mentioned that this is the only way that you're going to be able to make trades, but do you see a way or a pathway to be able to acquire more picks in the 2026 NFL draft? Or are we just sitting at a point where, okay, it's 2027, that's the only way we're going to be able to make a move like that?
Well, I think there are ways that you can get more picks. Obviously, I think trading back is going to be a big part of that philosophy. We saw the Bears do that in Ian Cunningham's first draft, which he's mentioned a number of times as kind of what they're trying to do, going from 5 picks to I believe 11 picks that year. And that mostly was with trade backs. Obviously, they had the Khalil Mack trade. That was a way that they were able to acquire more picks. And I think, we talk about Jesse Bates, we talk about Kyle Pitts as potential trade options for this Falcon team that, if the right price is being met, if some team comes calling, then I think you open the door to that in terms of being able to get some more draft capital for those guys. But Jarvis, before I finish, you mentioned how our fan base doesn't necessarily have a good assessment. I'm reading the chat right now, and someone said the Falcons will be Super Bowl champions. So I just want you to know that you don't have to worry about a contender calling for Jesse Bates, because the Falcons will be that contender, according to King Atlanta supporter #1 in the chat.
I'm gonna give King Atlanta supporter the benefit of the doubt, and he say will be. Will be meaning future,
open-ended. Yes, like, open-ended. I got you. Yeah,
not 2026.
Okay.
At some point in the future, the Falcons will be Super Bowl champions.
Between now and the heat death of the universe, yes, I agree with that.
What? The heat death of the universe.
That's 1 trillion years from now, the universe will be over, and the Falcons will be able to say they won a Super Bowl at some point in the next 1 trillion years. So I think that's right. The math is in their favor.
Man, say I have so many jokes coming through my mind right now. That's why I feel like we need to go to break, because I'll probably give myself in trouble if I say that came to mind first. I'll probably tell you later on after the show. All right. Coming up next, Jeff Ulbrich done spilled the beans, and this man got the talking versatility off-ball linebacker in Jaylen Walker's future. We'll discuss. This episode of the Locked On Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by FanDuel. College basketball is nonstop. Big games, tight spreads, momentum swings every single night, from early tip-offs to late-night West Coast shootouts. There's always action on the board, and now FanDuel is giving you a way to turn that energy into even bigger potential wins with a college basketball parlay profit boost. Say that fast 17 times. You can build any college hoops parlay you want, from rivalry games, ranked matchups, and whatever fits your floats your boat, baby. That's what you can do. Then you can apply that profit boost and instantly bump up that potential buyout. So go safe, go bold, ride with the team you've been following all season. It's your parlay, your style, now with more upside behind it. I'm telling you, because the tournament is here, college basketball is being played. So I need you to go out there and do your thing. So head to FanDuel.com to get started. That's FanDuel.com. FanDuel, play your game. I want to say thank you for making the Foul Squad your first listen of the day, or for your second listen. Make sure you check out my main man, Locked On Falcons, the most humble host in the business, Aaron Freeman. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. So, Aaron, Jeff Ulbrich was down speaking to the media at Georgia's Pro Day about what Jaylen Walker's sophomore season is going to look like. And Brick used the word versatility quite a bit. Now, last year, we mostly saw Jaylen Walker working at the edge position, and I thought that he showed some really good things. He had 5.5 sacks. He had a couple forced fumbles. He was just pretty active. Now, he had the soft tissue injuries. They kind of kept him out for a few games, but overall, I think it was a solid pick, and they got some good value for the 15th overall pick out of Georgia. But to me, it seems like Jeff Ulbrich is considering listening to me and using him more so at that off-ball linebacker spot to maybe replace Caden Ellis. Do you think that's what this is, or you kind of think that Jeff may have, spoken out of turn a little bit? He might not be really thinking that.
Well, I do think we did get to see them dabble a little bit with Jaylen Walker as an off-ball linebacker, but it was almost always in like third and obvious passing situations.
Yep.
And so I think we will see more of that than necessarily it's 1st and 10 and Jaylen Walker is lined up, 5 yards off the ball in the A gap or whatever, like a traditional off-ball linebacker. I think we might see some of that, but sure. I don't think that's their plan A. I think they'll hopefully have better options to do that a lot more, whether that's Christian Harris, whether that's a rookie or somebody else lining up to Divine Diablo. in that excuse me, that part of Caden Ellis's role. But I do think like you'll see the Falcons try to lean a little bit more in Jaylen Walker's versatility to be able to line up anywhere on the defensive line or whatever, in the A gap, the B gap, the C gap, etc. To try to take advantage of and create mismatches, because frankly, a lot more of their pass rush is going to lean on Jaylen Walker this year, potentially, depending on, we know Caden Ellis is not going to be there. We don't really know what's the situation going to be with James Pierce come September. And so once you remove those two elements from your pass rush, you're looking around the rest of the room. And it's not to say that, they're a bunch of bums or anything like that, but you don't necessarily have that go-to guy that you're like, I know that guy's going to win in certain situations, where Pierce was that in the second half of the season. Ellis was that for the Falcons last year, particularly when they were such a heavy blitz team in the first half of the season. And so I think you're going to see the Falcons, rather than just being like, oh, Jaylen Walker, you're purely an edge in 95, 98% of the time. It might be like, I don't know, 80% of the time you're an edge. And then we can play around with some things for the other 20% to see what works. And if it works, then we'll keep using it. And if it doesn't work, it's like, okay, well, we'll just go back to basics and we'll try to figure something out. So I think Jaylen Walker is going to be a huge part of what growth this pass rush and this defense can do this upcoming season.
Yeah, I'm with you, man, because here's the thing. I feel like the original plan was probably to get him to dib and dab in that a little bit more so this year. I think that's going to be reduced a little bit because of the whole James Pierce Jr. situation. I think he's going to have to adjust that, and I'm sure he's already thinking in his mind that, or operating in the mindset of having to adjust it a little bit more so than what he wanted to, because I mean, a guy like Jaylen Walker is a talented dude, and I think that just solely using him as an edge, you're probably kind of limiting his value a little bit. So I think that, Brick has to operate as if James Pierce Jr. is not going to be there. So for him to kind of go 50-50, I definitely don't see that. I don't think that was a plan in the first place, but just using that example of them plans have to be changed. Like plans have to be kind of altered some when you potentially lose a guy like James Pierce Jr. I'm already talking about the man as if he's gone already. Maybe I may know something. I don't know. Who knows? But free. I think it's interesting though. Like with the value signings, right? Samson, Ebukam, or Bukum. Can't think which one it is.
Ebukam is how a Colts person told me it was pronounced.
Ebukam. There we go. We'll go with that. By the way, he said he's a really big fan of T.I. because his brother used to play T.I. all the time. He told me that when I asked him about what he brings to the table as a Falcon. So I'm like, hey, man, appreciate that info, my dog. So, yeah, I go ahead and share that for the folks out there. He's a big Tip fan. Pause. But back on to your regular schedule program. But I think it'll be interesting to see who kind of morphs into the other guy, right? Because right now they're just another guy. We got a whole bunch of Jags at the edge spot. Will it be a guy like Ebukam, or would it be a guy like Azeez Ojulari? It's just so many different names that can be thrown out there. And if we're going to add another guy who's another rookie, do they draft another guy as well? So I think, man, this edge room is going to be very interesting, because I feel like Jeff Ulbrich is probably going to determine whether or not how much he uses Jaylen in that off-ball situation based off of the type of production he gets from the Jags.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great point, because, if you're looking at it right now, if you're not counting James Pierce as an option, and we'll see what comes with that. But if you're just going like, okay, let me get my 4 best pass rushers on the football field, right? Jaylen Walker is one of those.
Sure.
Brandon Doyle, one of the guys on the interior. You probably kick Zach Harrison inside on the interior as well. Yeah. And then you're trying to figure out, okay, who's the 4th guy, right? And if it's probably going to be one of those new guys, and I think you nailed the two likeliest candidates being Ebukam or Ojulari, right? If Ebukam can get back to where he was pre Achilles injury in 2023 when he had 9.5 sacks, like he's a clear, obvious choice there. If Ojulari can get to the level that he was, pre multiple injuries in New York, where he had 8 sacks as a rookie, he could be that option as well. And there's certainly a world where the Falcons, have both of those guys step up. And those are your two edge rushers, similar to how last year it was a lot of James Pierce and Leonard Floyd as the two edges, with Jaylen Walker kicking inside to be, that stand-up rusher in the A or B gap going up against the guard. So you have a lot. Again, that's why I think Jaylen Walker's versatility is such a valuable asset, because you can kind of put him hopefully wherever you need to put him in order to get the 4 best guys on the field on any given sort of passing situation. And then if he's able to win his one-on-ones on a consistent basis, now you have 3 or 4 guys that can win their one-on-one. So I think, it's going to be interesting to sort of see who emerges in that group, especially with the newcomers. And then obviously if you have James Pierce, playing this year, then, you're looking even better in terms of what, you can throw at opposing offensive lines.
Oh man, that's gonna be very interesting, because if he's able to play in that first game and he doesn't have a suspension, which I don't see that happen at all, but even if he gets a 6-game suspension, it'll be very interesting to see that dude back in the Falcons uniform. That's gonna be definitely something we're going to have to watch. Now, speaking of Georgia Bulldogs and those guys, that's the first time I actually said their full name, because I don't say it on Locked On Georgia Tech. I don't say it full name on Locked On Georgia Tech. You know what I'm saying? Because that's just my thing. Out of respect. You know what I'm saying? Gotta respect what's going on. Gotta respect the house, man. You know what I'm saying? Can't become putting feet on the couch and all that stuff. But anyway, Oscar Delp turned a lot of heads at Georgia's Pro Day, and talking about a guy who's 6'5", 245 pounds, ran a 4.48. He literally took off his cleats after he ran that 40. Aaron said, "I'm done." And I totally understand that. Now, I want to kind of bring up a previous conversation that we had probably about a week ago, maybe about a week or so, maybe a week and a half ago on Locked On Falcons. That's what we do, y'all. We bring conversations, just in case you guys missed it. There was a certain question that I asked you. Oscar Delp is very athletic. He's super fast. And, you might be able to snag him in the 2nd, maybe 3rd round, maybe potentially. So, if you're the GM of this team, Aaron Freeman, Locked On Falcons Prophet, does Oscar Delp make Kyle Pitts expendable?
Eventually, yes. In terms of who's going to give you more in 2026, Kyle Pitts is giving you a lot more, right? We know tight ends typically do not hit the ground running in the NFL. It's changing in recent years, Harold Fanning's a good testament to, it's not as much of an issue as it used to be. But I think if you're a team like the Atlanta Falcons in this purely hypothetical situation, and you draft Oscar Delp, I think that's clearly signaling that you're planning on probably moving forward beyond 2026 without Kyle Pitts. Right. The question, of course, at that point is going to be, are you going to get to a point at some point in 2026 where you're without Kyle Pitts? And that a lot will depend on, what teams are offering you as far as trades go. But if we're at the point where we're drafting Oscar Delp on day 2 and Kyle Pitts is still on the team, like I wouldn't expect a draft trade of Kyle Pitts at that point in time, because it feels like those should be kind of simultaneous. You should have traded Pitts before you got or something like that. But going back to your previous point, depending on how the season starts, we get to the trade deadline, and some team is like, "Hey, we'll give you a 3rd or 4th round pick for Kyle Pitts," and the Falcons are like, "Okay." I know there's going to be a lot of people that are like, "That's not enough for Kyle Pitts," but it's like, it kind of is. I mean, when you just look at, tight end trades and whatnot, like, again, it's not meant to be a shot at Kyle Pitts. It's just more just like, TJ Hawkinson got traded for like a 2nd or like a late 2nd round pick. And so You know?
And a fourth, I believe.
Yeah,
I remember
something like
correctly.
that. Yeah. So like if you're getting a third, like it's not going to get better. That's basically what I'm saying. Like you're not going to get a better offer than that. Like that's the best offer you're going to get. So you know you gotta do what you gotta do.
Yeah, man. It's so interesting because you know it's so cool to have a man. This don't sound like shade, but I'm gonna say it anyway. It's so cool to have an open-minded general manager. Like when it comes to figuring out ways to how to better your team. Like Terry Fontenot would never do anything like that. He wouldn't trade Kyle Pitts at the trade deadline, I don't think, because I feel like most of it because of he drafted the guy, right? He has that connection with him. And then a guy like Jesse Bates, that was a hit. That was a home run because there were people out there who did not like the Jesse Bates signing. Who didn't really care for it, you know?
There were people out there.
Yeah, there were people out there. They were out there, you know, and one of them is sitting in this seat right now that I'm sitting in, right? So, yeah, you know, like, so I don't think he would make that. I don't think that would be on the table. He probably hang up the phone or say, nah, man, we good, and then hang up the phone. But Ian Cunningham now, fresh set of eyes, new outlook, new vision for where this team is going. He's like, okay, maybe we don't need a tight end, a unicorn at the tight end position. Maybe we can go out in the draft and go get a guy because, shoot, look where Kevin Stefanski came from. They still had David Njoku on the roster. They still had David Njoku on the roster, and they still drafted Harold Fan. And Harold Fan had a really good rookie season. So I think that if Andrew Berry would have got a phone call about David Njoku, which, you know, he would listen. He probably would have taken a 5th round pick or a 6th round pick, you know, just because he walked in free agent. So I like, you know, these different scenarios because I feel like this is something that Ian Cunningham wouldn't be averse to doing, right? Like I think that he has that open mind. He understands what draft capital can do for you in all aspects of the NFL offseason. So and helping getting your team to where it needs to be. All right. So, you know, we talked about Jaylen Walker being an off-ball guy, potentially kind of varying whether or not how much it's going to be. We don't know that. And I think that time is going to tell when it comes to that. But, you know, Ian Cunningham signed Jahan Dotson. Jahan Dotson talked about how he has not been able to kind of express himself on the field because of who he's behind in Philadelphia. We're going to talk about if you're going to be able to do that when he comes to Atlanta. This episode of the On Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by Indeed. I'm sorry. Yes, we're going to talk about Indeed. Yes. Workplace chaos, deadlines stacking up, inbox overflowing, and the one position you have to fill is still sitting open. When the pressure's on and you need the right hire, this is a job for sponsored jobs. Indeed, sponsored jobs helps you reach people who actually fit what you're looking for, so you're not just hoping the right candidate stumbles across your post. And here's a stat that says it all. In the minute I've been talking to you, companies like yours made 27 hires on Indeed. So you're behind the 8 ball right now. So I need you to go to Indeed.com right now. Spend less time searching and more time actually interviewing candidates who check all the boxes. Less stress, less time, more results. When you need the right person to cut through the chaos, this is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. And listen to the show. We'll get a $75 sponsored job credit to help your job get the premium status it deserves at Indeed.com/podcast. Just go to Indeed.com/podcast right now and support the show by saying you heard it on the Locked On Falcons Squad Show. Indeed.com/podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? This is a job for Indeed sponsored jobs. Jahan Dotson was taking 8 picks after Drake London in the 2022 NFL draft, and he signed a 2-year deal worth $15 million, and 10 of it was guaranteed. And he will be on his 3rd team, Aaron, in 5 years in 2026. Jahan Dotson was very adamant about saying that he is looking to improve himself. He's looking to be the guy that can display why or justify why he was drafted in the first round by the Washington Commanders. But how do you feel? Do you feel he is a candidate, or do you feel he's capable of being a strong 2 for the Atlanta Falcons?
I mean, yes, I think he's capable. Would I bet on it? I don't know. I wouldn't bet on it, I wouldn't bet on a 60 catch, 900-yard season for Jahan Dotson this year. This is basically what I'm saying. But do I think he's capable of achieving that? Yes, I do. And I like hearing that he's hungry. I like hearing that he's carrying that chip on his shoulder of, no one believes in me now. And, I was a first round pick for a reason, and I'm ready to show the world. I enjoy hearing that. That's the exact type of attitude that you want for your number 2 wide receiver that's eager to take advantage of the opportunities now going to have for him here in Atlanta that he didn't necessarily really have in his previous stops, particularly in Philadelphia. Obviously, Washington, his first 2 years, they wanted him to be a star there, but then a new regime took over and going into his 3rd year, and they were just like, okay, we're cleaning house. We're basically getting rid of all the other regimes, former players, and kind of starting fresh with basically Scary Terry being one of the few players that I think was a holdover from that previous regime. But, I think Dotson comes in here with an opportunity right now. I think we'll continue to see the Falcons add at the wide receiver room, but without having a first round pick, the odds aren't necessarily in your favor that you're going to be able to automatically land a guy that's going to be able to come in day one and immediately leapfrog him on the depth chart. Although I think those expectations will be there for the future, but we'll sort of see who they wind up landing in the draft. But I think Dotson has a golden opportunity to kind of, showcase that he's a lot more of a capable wide receiver and potentially a number 2 than what he's shown before. But calling him a strong number 2, like you see a lot of similarities with Darnell Mooney, and certainly I did not have expectations that Darnell Mooney would be a strong number 2, but I also thought Darnell Mooney was going into an offense that was much more open to we're gonna throw the ball a lot more, and I don't know if we're gonna get the same in terms of we're gonna sling it all around the yard with this Kevin Stefanski offense and with Tua and all that stuff. So we'll see. To me, a lot of Dotson's upside may be tied to how much Michael Penix plays this year, more so than what the offense I'm envisioning this offense being under Tua Tagovailoa at the start of outside of the season. So we'll see how it all falls.
Yeah, I think he does have the potential. I'm not saying necessarily be a strong 2, but I think like a surprising 2. Like Darnell Mooney in his first year, like, oh, okay, Darnell,
yeah,
like he was an injury away from having a 1,000-yard season towards the end of the year in 2024. So that's the thing for me that I'm not saying those are going to be my expectations for him, but I can see him in that role, like just being a surprise guy, as long as he's able to stay healthy, and Tua is maybe potentially to be able to get the ball down the field and take advantage of his speed, taking things over the top, because he's going to get some opportunities, right? Because when you look at what Drake London and the type of attention that he's been starting to draw now, or he's going to draw in 2026, like he's going to have options, because essentially, Kyle was able to take advantage of that a little bit, when they were on the field at the same time. But, I feel like Dotson is in a good situation, and I'm not surprised that he actually, chose to come here, because it's a perfect scenario, like a guy like Darnell Mooney when he first came in. So I think this is one of those deals where when you look at the situation and try to assess this thing, you say, okay, all right, this is how this offense is going to play out. We're going to see some 12 personnel, maybe some 13, and they're going to be a run heavy. They're going to focus on the run. They're going to lean on the run game throughout this year, regardless of who's at quarterback. Yeah, you're going to get some one-on-one opportunities, and that's all you ask for in the NFL. And a lot of times, if that's what the only thing that you're seeing, like a guy like Dotson, who's been in this league and understands what that is, or should understand what that is, yeah, I feel like he's going to have some ops to to be able to take advantage of that. Real quick, we talked about, James Pierce and what that could look like and how that could affect what Jaylen Walker's role could be as far as playing off-ball linebacker and edge, and what the percentages will be as far as time being spent at those spots. I'm interested to kind of pick your brain on Cunningham's approach to the edge position in free agency. And does it seem like, based off of the move that he's made, that he's preparing for that worst case scenario where James Pierce will be out for a long period of time?
Yeah, I think that's one aspect of it. I think the other one is just, they're trying to maximize bang for their buck. And, it'd be easy, if the Falcons could have gone out there and just signed one guy that gets you 10 sacks, right? But instead they're trying to get, like, I guess 3 guys that get you, 3.5 sacks or something like that, as opposed to being able to solve it with one obvious spending move. And so, I think with the additions of Samson Ebukam and Azeez Ojulari and Cameron Thomas, I was like, what is his first name? the Thomas guy.
The Thomas dude.
Yeah. You're getting 3 guys that, some of those, Thomas Moore being more of that run defender, early down guy, which, allows you potentially, if you do have a James Pierce, to keep him fresher on those early downs where we know James Pierce is not necessarily going to be a plus player for you. And then on top of that, you do have 2 guys in Ojulari and Ebukam who have specialized as being more of those DPRs, those designated pass rushers, like a JPJ in the past. And sort of you have kind of 2 bites at the apple to kind of solve that problem. And so, I feel like this sort of shotgun approach or scatter shot approach to it, I think, is a smart strategy, especially when you can't go out and do what the Carolina Panthers did and go out there and pay a Jalen Phillips, where it's like, oh, well, we got Jalen Phillips, that, problem solved, right?
1 for 1.
Yeah. Falcons can't really do that at this stage.
No.
And so you're trying to get the most bang for your buck. And I think their approach has been a smart one, given those parameters.
Yeah, and with that move, like a Jalen Phillips move, that seems like a Terry Fontenot type move. Man, it seems like I'm throwing shade at this man. But no, I think, because thinking that one Band-Aid, so to speak, is going to fix all of our issues when it comes to getting pressure off the edge. And we know that Carolina struggled with that last year. So that's why they're trying to fix it. And, Jalen hasn't been the most healthy guy, so that has to be taken into account as well. So to give him that type of money, I will see how it plays out, but I don't want to operate like that. I like multiple guys that have been productive, and hey, man, we'll see who rises to the top. And that's the best way to be. That's the most financially efficient way to be from a spending standpoint, and especially when you don't have that much cap space. So yeah, I think Ian has taken the right approach, and I think he's preparing for worst case scenario, because you have to, man. And I wouldn't be surprised if we see a month from now, when the NFL draft is going down, I wouldn't be surprised if we see another edge position guy being taken as well. All right. One of the things that, I really feel that the Falcons are, kind of, speaking of the NFL draft, we know it's about a month away. I want to kind of get into a discussion about, is this roster ready for the NFL draft? Has Ian Cunningham gotten this roster to a point where all they have to do is add some young pieces, some cheap labor in 2026 NFL draft? This episode of the Locked On Falcons Squad Show is brought to you by 5 Hour Energy. The 5 Hour Energy flavor draft is here with 18 flavors to choose from, including new options like Confetti Craze, Fruity Rainbow, or Cotton Candy. There is something for everyone. The board is set, the flavors are ready, and I've got my number 1 pick for the 5 Hour Energy flavor draft. My number 1 pick is cherry. Aaron, don't look like that, man. I'm excited about this thing. Have you had the cherry? 5-hour energy, man, it is absolutely amazing. I'm talking about bold, cherry candy style flavor, sweet with a light tart edge, classic red fruit profile, bright punchy taste. It's just absolutely amazing. You know, another flavor that I've been just waiting to get my hands on. Oh my gosh, peach mango, ripe peach flavor on the first sip. You know, I'm a Georgia boy, so you know I like my peaches. You know what I'm saying? You know how I get down. I love me some big peaches, baby. Yeah, so that's what we do. So smooth, rounded fruit profile, slightly richer mouthfeel, and a citrus flavor, just sweet, aromatic finish. It's absolutely amazing. So, and also 5-hour energy shots give you a boost with 0 sugar. That's 0 sugar. So find your new favorite flavor of 5-hour energy shots available at 5hourenergy.com, or you can find it on Amazon. Wrapping things up here on the Locked On Falcons Squad Show. Man, Free, why you be laughing at me when I'm doing my doggone live reads,
I'm
man?
trying to hold it in, Jarvis. You talk about peaches and mouthfeel. It's a lot. It's a lot to take in, you know. So I'm just saying, do your thing. I'm sorry.
Yeah, man, you can't be messing me up, man. I'm trying to focus, man. You know how it is when I'm hosting, man. I can't be doing all that crazy stuff that you be doing when you know what I'm saying, when Tanitra hosting and stuff. So come on, man. Help a brother out right here. Come on, man. Don't do me like that. So, but yeah, back to the show because Free got me all off schedule and everything. So, yeah, we'll talk about Ian Cunningham's, you know, the guys that he's put on this roster so far. It was very clear that he was trying to find value. It's very clear that he was being financially responsible. He's trying to figure out a way to position himself in the draft to get players. He was able to move back and get a guy like Sidney Brown, and move back a few spots in the in the 4th and 6th round. So when you think about all of the moves that Ian has made, Free, do you feel like this roster is ready just to add players from the draft?
Yes, I do. I think if the goal was to basically let's build a 53 so that if we needed to play a game right now, we could play a game right now. I think they've accomplished that mission. Now, whether you love the 53 guys is certainly a different conversation, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
I'm sure, you know, we could come up with a different list, a number of those guys. Like 8 of those guys, I don't really want those guys on my 53. Let's see if we can upgrade those spots. Maybe you might push that number to 12 or 15 or whatever. But like, I think in terms of you have it at a point where your roster is mostly filled in so that you can actually go into the draft. And again, I know this is a bad word to Falcon fans, and actually take the best player available, that you're not tied to, we have to fill this need. Now there's certain positions where it's just like, okay, yeah, we could definitely stand to use a lot more help at these spots, but it's not to the point where it's like there's an obvious glaring massive hole on the roster. It's like, oh, well, we know where they're going in round 2. Like, I think the Falcons can go in so many different directions because, as we've been discussing, like, this roster is filled in, but it's not quite to the level where you really want it overall. Like, you have some star players, you have some solid role players, but you still need a lot of help pretty much across. Like, there's really no position outside of special teams that you're looking at, and I'm referring specifically to kicker, punter, long snapper, because they certainly could use some help in the return game. Sure. You know, that you're looking at this roster and being like, oh, they shouldn't draft the guy there, right? Because you know, if the right player is there and that's a player that's going to make that room better, that position group better, they absolutely can take those spots. So I think they're in a good spot to go best player available, even if, you know, people don't want to hear that. But it's just really, and it goes to the theme that we've been talking about all day, where it's just like, you know, comparing, you know, why the Panthers signed Jalen Phillips rather than what the Falcons are doing, right? What these Terry Fontenot-like moves where these teams, the Falcons, Carolina now, have been in this position where we got to get over the hump. Like, this got to be the proof in the pudding. Carolina is trying to make a push, not just to win the division, but win a playoff game with the current model of their team, while the Falcons are going into year 1. And so you can really make those bets that may not necessarily be designed to push you over the hump this year, but are really going to be foundational pieces for your team over the next 3 to 5 years or whatever. And I think that's really where the Falcons have positioned themselves.
Yeah, man, and it's really good. It's good that they have done that because, like in years past, like we've had so many conversations leading up to the draft, and just like, oh, okay, the Falcons are going to get X position, and true enough, it's kind of cool to be able to pinpoint what position they need by looking at going up and down the roster, but man, it's such a better feeling. You position yourself to be in better position when you have fillers, so to speak, at every position, and you have depth at every position. Even if you don't add a first round pick or a second round pick or something like that. So because I feel like that's sustainable. Because when you start doing this whole whack-a-mole, hey, here we need this year, and we got to go after this, and we got to get a guy in the draft. A lot of times you start to reach, you start to overpay, and you start to overvalue guys at those positions. And we've seen that play out from the previous regime. So I think Ian has done a good job of setting himself up to be in position to say, all right, okay, here's our board. Here's what we're looking at. Pick 48, second round. All right. We got this defensive tackle right here. He's our highest rated guy right now. So let's go with that. Or we got this wide receiver sitting right here. Yep. He's the high rated guy right there. Let's go right there. Or we got our corner right here. Like whatever position it is that we know the Falcons need to fill, not necessarily there is a desperate need to fill, but there's a need to get younger and get cheaper there. Like that's the always going to be the goal in my mind for a general manager. Like you get young and cheap and super talented. Like, hey man, the better you can do that at most positions, the more you'll be able to pay a quarterback $40 and $50 million and still be able to go out there and compete, because that's where the contracts are going. It's ridiculous. And by the way, so free, I'm doing my little research as we were, I was getting prepared for the show this morning, and came across this little breaking news. Jackson Smith and Jigba just got 4 years, $168 million. The Falcons have a wide receiver. It's going into his last year of his deal. Do you think Drake is going to get $40+ million? I don't think so, but you may feel differently. I don't think he's going to get $40 million annually, but how do you feel about one Drake London potentially getting a deal like that?
I don't see the 40 million. Yeah, I kind of always slotted Drake in this $33-35 million range. Yeah. But with JSN pushing it up from the top of the market from 40 million, where Jamar Chase got paid last year, to now 42 million. It's like Drake is like, hey, throw a couple of $2 million extra my way too. Can we get to 35 to 37 range? And so like I could see how the market moves a little bit more in Drake's favor a little bit based off of this deal. But yeah, I don't see him getting $40 million. But certainly, maybe instead of settling again, $33 million is not nothing to
that's nothing to settle for.
Yeah. Settling air quotes for $33 million. Like now he's like, let's push that to 35. Let's see. Can we get it to 36 maybe? I'm worth CD Lamb money or whatever, his rep thinks. And so, if you're the Falcons, I know people have, visions of, we can trade Drake just like Jaylen Waddle and get picks back. But it's like, sure, but who's catching the football in this offense if you trade Drake London? I just want to know. I just like, is it going to be Kyle Pitts and Bijan Robinson? And you think you're going to build a top 5 offense with those two guys as your 1-2 punch? You're gonna draft a rookie and that guy's gonna instantly be Puka Nacua? Like, okay, good luck with that. Hey, if you want to make that bet, go ahead. Look, I'm just here to talk about the team, not play on the team. It ain't going to be me watching this team struggle to get 17 points, or it is going to be me watching this team struggle to get 17 points. Yes. But at the end of the day, like my paycheck, I'm still getting paid regardless of how many points the team scores. So if that's the vision, then Be my guest, but it's like
Aaron
that's all I'm saying.
with the flex on them. You know what I'm saying? Flexed on them right then and there. I'm getting paid regardless. Oh, man, I don't care how good this team is. I'm gonna get my check. That's still gonna clear it. Yeah,
I'm gonna be here watching this 17-point-a-game offense without Drake London. That's all I'm saying. I don't know how many of y'all are gonna be here, but I'm paid to be here. That's basically what I'm saying.
Speaking of flexing, so I also came across this interesting video. It was Jarvis Landry and Leonard Fournette. I think Leonard Fournette has his own podcast now. Don't know the name of it.
Fourth and South. I learned it today. I learned it today for this conversation, Jarvis.
I should have known that, but hey, what it is. I'm not watching a Leonard Fournette podcast. I have no reason to. But until now. So Jarvis Landry, read you a little quote. This is Jarvis Landry talking about Kevin Stefanski. The only thing he got going for him is 2-time coach of the year. He's not able to get it done as a play caller and putting it off on somebody else. Teams get success, and he takes over play calling again. He's talking about when their offense was struggling and Alex Van Pelt was the offensive coordinator. Kevin Stefanski, they were having issues on the offense with Stefanski as a play caller. Then he turned it over to Alex Van Pelt, and the offense started to get rolling a little bit. So I'm just curious, man. Are you concerned about this notion? I know we may have already had the information. The information was already out there about him changing OCs during the season, but I think it's interesting when you hear it actually come from the player and how it made him feel. So is this something that you're concerned about, or are you kind of waiting to see once we get in the season, even though Stefanski's going to be calling plays, but if this offense starts to struggle, do you feel like Stefanski is going to be able to come in the room like Raheem Morris did when James was out there calling plays on the defense side of football?
Yeah, I mean, it is a concern of mine, Jarvis. Like, it is a legit concern of, like, what is the floor for this offense from a play calling standpoint?
Sure.
Right? Because I think when the Falcons made that, you used the Jimmy Lake example, I think a lot of folks at the time were like, oh, well, just because Jimmy Lake doesn't have a proven track record in the NFL, it doesn't really matter, because we know if there's a problem, Raheem will step in and sort of, solve that problem. But
sure,
the issue was, even though Raheem did help in that regard, you already had like a bottom 5 defense, right? Before Raheem felt compelled to kind of step in and just give you like competent defensive play for 5 games towards the end of the season or whatever it was. And you do wonder a little bit about a similar situation. It's like, oh, well, if Tommy Rees struggles, then Kevin Stefanski is going to take over play calling. But it's like, what level of struggle are we going to have to reach before Stefanski decides to do that? Is that a bottom 5 offense before we see that change? And at that point in time, if you're playing with a bottom 5 offense for 8 games, 10 games, 12 games, whatever, like, season's kind of, out the window at that point in time, unless you're countering that with like the number 1 defense, which the Browns arguably did in that last year where he won Coach of the Year. So it is definitely a concern when you just don't really know, because looking at the Kevin Stefanski offense, like I feel like coming out of Zach Robinson's last year in Atlanta, which obviously did not live up to the hype, but I think there is a expectation from a lot of folks that like the only problem the Falcons had was if we just get a better play caller in here, all of our problems are solved. And I feel like that mindset is wrong, but at the same time, like, I'm not convinced that Kevin Stefanski or Tommy Rees is the solution to that problem. If you think that's the only thing missing ingredient for this offense, their body of work does not suggest that they're going to solve that problem. And so that's why, like, to me, it is somewhat of a concern.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you on that, because, there's going to be a point, especially with this being their first year, they're going to come into they're going to have some roadblocks on this offense, because, when you look at the defense side of football, like, that's why I felt like last year, this defense was going to essentially have to carry this offense, because of Michael Penny's first full year being a starter, Zach Robinson, obviously his capability and whatever his floor was, or wherever I thought the floor was at that point in time going into the season, I was like, yeah, man, Jeff gonna have to get these boys rolling, and they were able to do that, to a certain extent. So for me this year, I feel like defense gonna have to be the same thing because of I wasn't necessarily all that high on Tommy Rees, from a play calling standpoint, because I haven't seen it, right? And Tommy Rees, even I kind of asked him about, making that transition from being his first year as a play caller in the NFL and now coming to a new team, and how he kind of is going to be able to implement exactly what he's trying to run or what he's trying to do on offense. And he brought up, like, yeah, we had some struggles, once he took over, but he said he did bring up some moments where he's like, yeah, we did have some moments in there where you saw some growth. So I'm trying to figure out when and if he's going to be able to put it all together. And then if he's not, is Kevin going to be able to step in and be like, hey, man, this is what we need to do? And I will say this, and people might look at me in this old type of way. You might look at me a certain type of way. It's the reason why Van Pelt on this roster, man. Like, he has several play callers on this roster that have done it before. And so I don't think that was by chance. And I'm not saying that Tommy Rees is on the hot seat already, but I am saying that there are going to be people going to be too many people in that room, not for them not to be able to figure what's going on offense when they have those roadblocks, because they're going to happen. It's just all about being able to figure it out going as they move forward. Because I think Jeff Ulbrich said something that just really stuck with me. And he was like, man, if my players come to the sidelines and I don't have an answer for them as far as what's going on that field, he's like, man, shoot, I deserve to be fired. I don't need to do my job. I don't need to have this job. And that's the sense of urgency that he operates in. I think same thing for the offense as well. Those guys better be able to figure it out. There's too many heads in that room. In that room, the guys have called plays in this league, have had success in developing quarterbacks and all that stuff. So there's no excuses when it comes to that side of the football. And we'll see, hopefully Jarvis and Leonard Fournette, because I think it was a little shade, especially coming from Fournette. Leonard was like, oh, well, how this man get another job? He got fired from Cleveland, and I'm sitting here, you and I both, and we ain't got no job. I'm like, man, it's like, bro, what does that got to do with anything what y'all talking about? So I think it was a little bit of just a little hate, little hateration, a little shade. You know what I'm saying? They were kind of mad that Stefanski got a job and they sitting here doing a podcast. It's okay to be doing a podcast. You didn't hear Free earlier, man. He's like, man, I got these big boy checks coming in, baby.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Man, I'm doing really well for myself. Like, doing a little podcast, So, hey, man, y'all get like Free, man. You know what I'm saying? Y'all be all right. You know what I'm saying? Y'all got your little deal. You know what I'm saying? Y'all doing your thing. So, anyway, yeah, that'll do it for our Falcon Squad show. Make sure you check out my man Aaron Freeman on Locked On Falcons. He is holding it down for you every single day. Got all that good bonus content. He actually brings me on this show, and we come in and talk a little football, and we'll talk a little some of everything else. Might be talking about white guys with 10 fades. You never know what we're going to talk about on Locked On Falcons. So make sure you guys check that out, and make sure you check out Tori over there at AtlantaFalcons.com. Hey, she's doing an interview with Sidney Brown. So make sure y'all check that out as well. And this is all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every single day. We'll see you on Thursday.